The year was 1985. The city, Los Angeles, was bathed in sunshine and the promise of Hollywood dreams. But under the bright veneer, a nightmare lurked. His name was Richard Ramirez, and he would soon be known to the world as the Night Stalker. He invaded homes in the dead of night, his victims ranging from the elderly to young children. This is the story of Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker, a man whose name became synonymous with evil. Richard Ramirez wasn't born a monster, he was made. His childhood in El Paso, Texas, was a breeding ground for the darkness that would consume him. Born into poverty, he was the youngest of 5 children, subject to his father's violent temper. His father, Julian, a former Mexican policeman, was a strict disciplinarian, prone to fits of rage that often culminated in brutal beatings. Adding to this toxic environment was the influence of his older cousin, Miguel. A Vietnam War veteran, Miguel regaled Richard with gruesome tales of the war, complete with photos of his victims. By his early teens, Ramirez was already exhibiting disturbing behavior. His descent into darkness had begun, setting the stage for the horrors he would unleash upon the world. The first whispers of the nightmare began to echo through the city. It was the spring of 1984, a time when the city was supposed to be waking up to new beginnings. Instead, Los Angeles awoke to news of a string of burglaries, each more disturbing and violent than the last. Homes were ransacked, possessions stolen, but something was different this time. The air was thick with fear and uncertainty. On June 28, 1984, the whispers turned to screams. The city was no longer just anxious. It was terrified. Jenny Vincow, a 79-year-old widow, was found brutally murdered in her apartment in Glassell Park. The brutality was unimaginable. She had been stabbed repeatedly, her throat slashed so deeply that she was nearly decapitated. The sheer savagery of the attack was beyond comprehension. The savagery of the attack shocked even seasoned detectives who had seen their fair share of violence. The city was on edge, but the killer remained elusive. People began to look over their shoulders, fearing the unknown predator. Days turned into weeks, each new day bringing with it the fear that the unseen predator would strike again. And strike he did, with a terrifying consistency. On July 7, 1984, just 9 days after Vincow's murder, the body of 22-year-old Maria Hernandez was discovered in her apartment. The police were baffled and the city was gripped by panic. Richard Ramirez, a name that would soon become synonymous with terror, was just getting started. The nightmare was far from over. As 1984 bled into 1985, the Night Stalker's attacks grew increasingly brazen. He favored nighttime intrusions, often entering homes through unlocked doors or windows. Ramirez reveled in the psychological torment of his victims, forcing them to watch as he ransacked their homes. He would often force his victims to repeat, "I love Satan," or draw pentagrams on their bodies. The media latched onto the satanic angle. The Night Stalker became a symbol of evil, his crimes a chilling reminder of the darkness that lurked beneath the surface of everyday life. The year 1985 saw Ramirez's reign of terror reach its zenith. The city of Los Angeles was gripped by fear as the Night Stalker continued his spree of violence. The random attacks continued, each more terrifying than the last. Residents were afraid to leave their homes, and the streets were eerily quiet at night. He preyed on the young and old, men and women, seemingly without preference. His unpredictability made him even more terrifying, as no one knew who would be next. The police were under immense pressure to catch the Night Stalker. The media coverage was relentless, and the public demanded answers and safety. Every available resource was thrown into the investigation, but Ramirez, like a phantom, seemed to slip through their grasp time and time again. Detectives worked around the clock, piecing together clues and following leads. On August 24, 1985, after a botched carjacking attempt, Ramirez was identified by several witnesses. This breakthrough was a glimmer of hope for the beleaguered city. His face, plastered across newspapers and television screens, became a symbol of fear. The media frenzy reached new heights as everyone wanted to know more about the man behind the terror. The manhunt intensified, and the city became a pressure cooker of fear and anticipation. Helicopters hovered overhead, and police patrols increased in frequency. Finally, on August 31, 1985, Richard Ramirez was apprehended by a group of East Los Angeles residents who recognized him from his mugshot in the newspaper. Their bravery brought an end to the nightmare. The relief in Los Angeles was palpable. People celebrated in the streets, and the sense of community was stronger than ever. The nightmare, it seemed, was finally over. The city began to heal, and life slowly returned to normal as the sun rose over a new day in Los Angeles. The trial of Richard Ramirez was a media spectacle unlike any other, drawing unprecedented attention from the public and press alike. Cameras crowded the courtroom, eager to capture every detail of the man who had held Los Angeles hostage for over a year, creating a frenzy that was palpable. Ramirez, relishing the attention, played the part of the villain to perfection. He seemed to thrive on the chaos and fear he had instilled in the community. He smiled, he smirked, he flashed the satanic hand gesture to the cameras, further cementing his image as the Night Stalker. During the trial, the prosecution presented a mountain of evidence, meticulously linking Ramirez to 13 murders, 5 attempted murders, 11 sexual assault charges, and 14 burglary charges. The evidence was overwhelming and meticulously detailed. Despite the overwhelming evidence against him, Ramirez maintained his innocence throughout the trial, often appearing defiant and unrepentant. However, his facade began to crack when he took the stand in his own defense. His demeanor shifted, revealing cracks in his previously unshakable confidence. His rambling, often incoherent testimony did little to help his case. It became clear that his bravado was a thin veneer over a deeply troubled individual. On September 20th, 1989, after a lengthy trial and 4 days of deliberation, Richard Ramirez was found guilty on all 49 counts against him. The verdict brought a sense of relief to a city that had been gripped by fear and terror for far too long. The courtroom erupted in cheers as the guilty verdict was read. For the families of the victims, it was a moment of bittersweet victory. During the sentencing phase, the jury recommended the death penalty for Ramirez. As the judge read the sentence, Ramirez, for once, seemed subdued. He stared straight ahead, his face devoid of emotion. "Big deal," he muttered as he was led out of the courtroom. The Night Stalker, the boogeyman who had haunted their dreams, was going to die for his crimes. However, the legal process was far from over. He would die, not in the gas chamber at San Quentin, but of natural causes in 2013, at the age of 53, while awaiting execution on death row. Richard Ramirez died on June 7, 2013, at Marin General Hospital near San Quentin State Prison. He was 53 years old. The cause of death was complications from B-cell lymphoma. His death, while bringing an end to his long and drawn-out legal saga, did little to heal the wounds he had inflicted. For the families of his victims, it was a reminder of their loss. Some celebrated, seeing it as a long-awaited victory for justice. Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker, was gone. The shadow of the Night Stalker loomed large over Los Angeles long after his capture. His crimes had a profound impact on the city, forever changing the way people lived and interacted with their surroundings. Fear, once a stranger to the sun-drenched streets of Los Angeles, became a constant companion. People were afraid to sleep with their windows open, to answer their doors after dark. The city, once known for its carefree spirit, had become a place of suspicion and unease. The media frenzy surrounding the case only amplified the sense of paranoia. The Night Stalker case also exposed the vulnerabilities of the city's law enforcement agencies. The Los Angeles Police Department implemented significant changes to its investigative techniques, particularly in the area of serial crime investigation. Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker, may be gone, but his legacy of fear and fascination endures. His name remains synonymous with evil, his crimes a chilling reminder of the darkness that can lurk beneath the surface of everyday life. His story continues to captivate and horrify, inspiring countless books, documentaries, and television shows. True crime enthusiasts dissect his every move, attempting to understand the motivations behind his senseless brutality. His crimes left an indelible scar on the city's psyche, forever altering the way people viewed their safety and security. The memory of those dark days lingers, a reminder that even in the City of Angels, darkness can find a foothold.